Hello, Hattie Drago here with it's the first time I've done something like this in a while. I used to talk about new sets coming out for each card game all the time, but I decided for the return to Zendikar, Battle for Zendikar, I would bring back talking about my opinion of the set as a whole in both limited formats and its appliance to constructed formats. So it's going to be a two-part video. I would rather have one video dedicated to limited, one video dedicated to constructed. So this will be my video for the limited format of Battle for Zendikar. I literally spent most of last night into the wee hours of the morning. No, I'm kidding. It's like until 3 a.m. Making my lists, my list of notes and data about what it appears to be the draft formats, the draft archetypes, the different color archetypes you could go with, and a few other notes that I find interesting about, each of these color combinations and how they potentially work. Alright, so, first, a disclaimer for this is I am not going to talk excessively about the colorless only Eldrazi. That means like any of the Eldrazi that are devoid, that have a color in their cost, are fair game. I'm going to be talking about a few of those throughout my discussion, but overall, the colorless only Eldrazi will always be good in limited format. Generally, you want to draft around the rares. If you get Ulamog, obviously build around Ulamog. If you get Blightherder, build around Blightherder. And then some of these cards, some Eldrazi are just good in anything. Anything that they could possibly be in. The best example is Endless One, which is X. Endless One enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, and that's great. That's great for any deck. If you're an aggro deck, it can be a 2-drop 2/2, 3-drop 3/3. It can be whatever you want. So, Endless One being an example. Some of the more generic, I will say, Eldrazi, like the Eldrazi Devastator just being an A-drop 8/9 trample. But in a general sense, the colorless Eldrazi will be good in pretty much anything you put them in anyway. So long as, obviously, it'd be better in an Eldrazi themed deck rather than a non-Eldrazi themed deck, but I'm sure that most of these will do fine in any type of limited format deck you want to put them in. So long as you plan accordingly. Don't just throw an Ulamog into an ally deck and expect it to work. Well, it might. It depends on how slow limited format will be. So anyways, the first thing I want to talk about is actually continuing to talk about the Eldrazi, but what impact each of their color combinations bring. This is the most interesting to me, because, we've dealt with, for, the past few years, I think since, Innistrad, really. Innistrad block, where we have distinct color factions that always have something to give. For Innistrad, it was green-white humans, white-blue spirits, black-red vampires, red-green werewolves, and that's it. I'm listing all of them. Oh, blue-black zombies. Sorry, forgot one. And then right after that, we went back to Ravnica, and they're all about having colors. The guilds of Ravnica, each having their own distinct thing they do. Then we went to Theros block, where we had the different gods, and they somewhat dictated what colors you wanted to be playing as, but it wasn't as strong. And then Khans of Tarkir, 3-color, and Khans of Tarkir 3-color was a thing, Dragons of Tarkir, the allied colors was a thing. So we've been through like 5 years, no, wait, 4 or 5 years of limited formats where it really is dictated by color, just either 2 or 3 color groups that work the best together. In Battle for Zendikar, yeah, you have the 2 color groups that work decently together, but it's more like the Eldrazi have blue, black, red, and green, and I'll mention this later on. The allies seem to be strongest in white, black, and red colors, and then you have just lands as a whole. It's more like the themes picked what colors they wanted to be rather than the colors dictating their themes. So I mentioned this because I went through and organized first I organized all the Eldrazi, just the devoid Eldrazi, based on their functions. So if it's a processor, it's a processor. If that processor has an upside, like a Scion maker, a Scion token maker, I made sure to make note of that. And what I came to the conclusion is each color really has its strengths, which should be obvious. But blue and green are the main token makers. Black and red, colorless matters. I'll go into more detail about this when I go through each color archetype, but I just find it fascinating how the Eldrazi have so many different ways of interacting with each other through their colors, and that they weren't just like shoehorned into being, oh, it's the Eldrazi, you ramp for all the big creatures. No, it's not the only way you can play it, and it's brilliant in my opinion. Okay, so let's move on to talking about the first 2 color archetypes, and then I'll get into 3 color archetypes. I'm going to go through the 2 color archetypes in better detail, and then 3 color archetypes I'll talk about what my thoughts are on them. So, white and blue, it classically has the flyers and evasion creatures down. We have cards like Angelic Gift that grants flying to a creature. We have good quality uncommon creature and Angel of Renewal that's a flyer. And she'll be popping up in a few other lists as well. She's actually not a pretty good card to pick if you need her, if your strategy requires her. And then there's a ton of white commons and uncommons with flying. Ghostly Sentinel, although that's technically not my favorite. Ghost of the 5-drop 3/3 flying vigilance. It's not bad, it's just not my favorite. Kitesail Scout 1-drop 1/1 flyer. Shadow Glider 3-drop 2/2 flyer. And that's just all in white. And then you got Benthic Infiltrator, which is devoid ingest and can't be blocked. Eldrazi Skyspawner that has flying and brings in a 1/1 with it. And then Mist Intruder, devoid flying ingest. So there's a lot of good evasion creatures in white and blue. But white and blue also has a land creatures type theme that I think is actually the best land creature type thing, with Awaken and such like that. I mean, prime example is if you just look at their color or multicolored cards. White and blue have 2 multicolored cards. And the rare is Noyandar, Royal Shaper. He's a legendary creature, and he definitely would be a high pick if you're wanting to go with this strategy. If you don't want to go with this strategy, insta-pass it. Just instantly pass it. Just ignore it. So, Noyandar, Royal Shaper is a 5-drop, 3 colorless, white, blue, 4/4. With whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may put 3 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. If you do, that land becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste that's still a land. So that means any spell, and this is blue we're talking about, right? Blue is one of the kings of sorceries and instants. Some of my favorite deck archetypes from the past few years, generally blue is instant and sorcery heavy, and red would be a close second. But considering all of the cards that have Awaken in white and blue, it's really astounding. And it's a very good strategy to have this. Undo Rising, I'm going to talk about this later on too with another deck archetype. I think Undo Rising is quite good. Sheer Drop is pretty good. I wish it was instant speed. Sheer Drop is 2 colorless, 1 white sorcery that's destroy target tap creature, but you can pay 5 colorless and a white instead to put 3 +1/+1 counters on a land. So actually, what Noyandar really does is all of these Awaken spells that you could cast them for their Awaken costs, but Noyandar really just lets you have Awaken without having to pay for Awaken. And it puts Awaken on every single one of your instants and sorceries, which is brilliant. The other multicolor card, the white-blue, that white-blue gets is Royal Spout, which is a sorcery, 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 blue. Put target creature on top of its owner's library. Classic removal. And then it has a Awaken 4 for 4 colorless, 1 white, and 1 blue, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Royal Spout, Noyandars actually would be quite good. If you get both of those, I say go for the white-blue flyer land creatures. And I'm not just combining these two because, you know, they just happen to have a lot of flyers, or they just happen to have a lot of support for Awaken and land creatures. No, there's a specific creature in blue that, here she is, Halimar Tidecaller. It's a 3-drop, 2 colorless, 1 blue for a 2/3 human wizard ally. Oh, one thing I might note, blue has probably the least amount of allies in regards to just most of the strategy, so if you want to draft allies, I would recommend avoiding blue for the most part. It just will not work for you. I'm sorry. Well, it could. I'm not saying it won't. I just don't think it will. Anyways, so Halimar Tidecaller, what she does is when Halimar Tidecaller enters the battlefield, you may return target card with Awaken from your graveyard to your hand. So recycling your Awaken cards is quite nice, and actually this effect reminds me of, what was his name? I can't remember his name right now, but I'll look it up and put it on the screen for you guys. But he was a I think it was actually a 2-drop. It was either a 2-drop, one in a blue, or 2 in a blue, and it was a 1/3 that you got to look at the top 3 cards and get an instant sorcery shenanigans. For some reason, it makes me think of that, and that was actually a really good creature in Standard, kinda. It hit Standard a little bit. Anyways, Halimar Tidecolor's other effect, and this is the one that melds this whole strategy together, is land creatures you control have flying. So, take all the shenanigans of Awaken and Noyandar, and then all your land creatures have flying. That's so great! And added bonus, another rare to look out for if you're wanting to try this strategy is Planner Outburst. Because, you know, even if you don't do the Awaken 4 for 8, 5 colorless, 3 white, just having it as a 5-drop board wipe that doesn't affect your land creatures is great. They will probably lose flying if you played the Tidecaller. So the archetype as a whole, it is not my favorite. It's not my favorite of the bunch, but I do see how it melds together, and I like it. And actually, Wizards Wizard definitely planned this, since in blue as well, there is an anti-flying card. Well, there's anti-flying cards in sets anyway, but like Tightening Coils does. It's a 1 in a blue enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets -6, -0 and loses flying. Well, I guess with a bunch of Eldrazi, a bunch of the Eldrazi that fly are about medium range, so I guess it fits. So, anyways, that is my thoughts on white-blue flyers plus land, flyer evasion plus land creatures. I think that would be the best route to go for that deck. And next is one of my personal favorites, that when the full set list came out, I was just seeing cards all over for the strategy. It's like, oh my god, I kind of want to draft this. This seems fun. And it's a life gain. Life gain allies. Now, generally speaking, and I always hear this from the guys over at Magic Show and anyone all over, that generally the life gain cards are usually not good for limited format, but I think the life gain strategy here with white-black allies is quite interesting. So, actually, before getting into just in their colors, the multicolor cards that white-black gets do completely, well, one of them completely fits this strategy, and the other one just really supports allies in general. So the rare March from the Tomb, 5-drop, 3 colorless, white-black. Return any number of target ally creature cards with total converted mana cost 8 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is like, if you're really wanting to draft allies and this is in your opening pack, you just take this. If you're just drafting allies anyway, and this is in your second or third, or if you get past it, if you really want to do allies, you just take this card. This is quite a good amount of value, especially with Rally. And I believe the Rally would trigger multiple times if there's a few rallies that have effects that do stack. It's not just Hero of Gomafadas you don't just have double indestructible, but there is like Core Entanglers. It's a uncommon 5-drop, 4 colorless, 1 white, 3/4, and has Rally. Whenever Core Entanglers or another ally enters battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. So stuff like that. There's a few allies like that have an effect that goes off multiple times a turn. It's not just double indestructible all the time, or double first strike. You heard me correctly, double first strike, because there's an ally that gives first strike. You don't get double first strike. Anyways, the other card, the uncommon for white-black that's in multicolor, is actually the prime example of what white-black is trying to do. It's Drana's Emissary, and 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 black, for a Vampire Cleric ally 2/2. Has flying, because what good vampire doesn't have some kind of evasion flying, whatever. At the beginning of your upkeep, your opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And actually, yeah, that is kind of more of the theme of white-black. I mean, life gain, definitely a thing. White definitely has the life gain down, and black has some. And black actually has a bunch of mainly vampires that care about you gaining life. For example, another rare that if you get this, well, it's a really high pick, but it's a bomb. It's a bomb rare, no matter what. And also it is, I believe, the intro pack one of the intro pack rares, Defiant Bloodlord. It's a 7-drop, 5 colorless, 2 black, 4/5, so definitely bomb material for limited. It has flying, and whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So, white-black, yeah, I guess it's not completely just life gain, it's life gain and drain. type of strategy. You could have it just be a life gain deck if you don't get all the life drain cards. And actually, this strategy probably is the one that wants Ob Nixilis the most. Well, his emblem. I highly doubt it would get there. But if you were able to get Ob Nixilis and his emblem out with this deck, it would work pretty well. So, like I said, there's a bunch of vampires that care about you gaining life, and a bunch of vampires and allies in black that either lose, or in white and black. In white, like I said, there's a lot of them that care about life gain. I mentioned before with the white-blue flyers, Angel of Renewal. And when she enters play, you gain 1 life for each creature you control. That's great. And she's also really a bomb uncommon. She's a 6-drop 4/4 that does that, so not too bad. And then you have some non-allies like Courier Griffin that when he enters play, you gain 2 life. Oh, and Felidar Sovereign. I would like to know, like, if anyone watches this video after pre-release is done, after you've done a draft, and you are so excited to get Felidar Sovereign to go off because of this deck, it's possible. It's definitely possible. And I will applaud you, good sir, or madam. Oh, and of course there's an ally that gives lifelink. And that's just an added bonus to this whole entire idea. And I also mentioned Ondu Rising before. I'll finally describe what that is. Ondu Rising is 1 colorless, 1 white sorcery, and it has whenever a creature attacks this turn, it gains lifelink until end of turn. So essentially, if you're not able to get Lantern Scout, Ondu Rising is also really good for the deck. Just temporary lifelink, so you can just gain all the life you want. Or attempt to. And actually, probably my favorite example of in white of how this life gain matters. It's just like the card is like, life gain is really a thing in this format. This format, isn't it? In these colors. So it's Serene Steward. It's got bear stats. 1 white, 1 colorless, 1 white, and a 2/2. It's whenever you gain life, you may pay white. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, which is great. Oh, do you have a Drana on the field that you want to put some +1/+1 counters on it? Sure, put some +1/+1 counters on it. Just gain some life first, which is super easy in these colors. And then for black, you got, first off, it is the second coming of, what's his name? Blood Artist. Blood Artist. There's a second coming of Blood Artist with this 2-drop 1/1 human rogue ally that whenever he or another creature you control dies, your opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's a second coming of Blood Artist. Oh no, oh my god, I don't think there's anything that's crazy enough to have this be a strategy like it was with the, I can call it Mardu right now, right? The Mardu, Boros Reckoner, just destroy everything with 13 damage deck. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen it. So, there's like 2 or 3 cards that are vampires and 1 bat that care about whenever you gain life. So, Calastria Nightwatch is a 5-drop 4/5, 4 colorless, 1 black, vampire warrior ally that whenever you gain life, it gains flying. And that's pretty good. I mean, a 5-drop 4/5 is nothing really exciting. It's really just an overcosted Siege Rhino at that point, that with no trample. But gain life, have flying, that's pretty awesome. And then we have this bat that already has flying, Malakir Familiar, that's a 3-drop 2/1. Yeah, no, not very good stats, but, you know, Gurmag Swiftwing from Khans of Tarkir is a one. He was a 3-drop 2/1 as well. No, he was either a 3. He was a 3-drop 1/2 with flying and haste and first strike. He had a few good things, and he was a pretty good card for that format for aggressive strategies. So Malakir Familiar, 3-drop 2/1, flying Death Touch. Whenever you gain life, Malakir Familiar gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Again, it's pretty awesome. Becomes a 3/2 or maybe a 4/2. That will stack upon itself so many times depending on how your white-black deck ends up handling. And then there's another guy, Nurkana Assassin, a vampire assassin ally. That's a 2 for 2 colors and a black. Get a 2/3. That whenever you gain life, Nurkana Assassin gains Death Touch, which is also awesome. And also, another interesting interaction with all of this, going back to a fellow ally and legendary creature, is Drana, Liberator of Malakir. She's an interesting card. She actually single-handedly made me want to make ally deck for standard, and she is one of the cards I'll more than likely be talking about tomorrow with constructed formats. So Drana, Liberator of Malakir, legendary creature, vampire ally for 1 colorless, 2 black, 2/3. So she's the second coming of Nighthawk, Vampire Nighthawk. Flying first strike. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature you control. So the interesting interaction that exists is because of first strike, if she deals damage before, if she's able to deal damage to the opponent with her first strike, just all the other creatures will get a +1/+1 counter, which is brilliant. Added bonus, if you have this white-black ally strategy, she also works exceptionally well with that. Like, say you played Ondu Rising, or you just played Lantern Scout, or played another card to put an ally into play to get Lantern Scout online. And you also have these crazy, like Nurkana Assassin, Calastria, Night Watch, Malakir Familiar, and Drana strikes first, you gain that life, and then you get all those bonuses and just attack for more. Plus the added bonus, if you happen to get into the face, you're gaining those counters and gaining even more. It just steamrolls into this crazy strategy. Also, if you mix some Eldrazi in, there is a pretty cool flying Eldrazi that whenever Silent Skimmer attacks, defending player loses 2 life. Although the unfortunate thing is that it is a 0/4, so well, I don't think anyone will block it. That's a good thing. Well, they'll probably block it to get rid of it, but not too bad, considering it's a nice drain side of the gain and drain strategy. Alright, I think I've talked enough about the white-black strategy. Let's move on to something that's a little less straightforward, in my opinion. So blue-black, what you think it will be in standard, it will probably be in limited as well. It's Eldrazi. Well, in my notes that I made, I called it Eldrazi Exile Flying Control. Yay! What I mean by that is, black also has a lot of flyers, and I'll talk more about flyers in general when I talk about Esper. But the Eldrazi in blue and black do have a lot of flying in between them, and with it being blue and black, it has a lot of good utility spells to just control the board and let you get victory. Actually, there's not a lot more to say about it. Any highlight cards? Well, Horribly Awry is just a great counterspell, and I know that's probably going to be used in multiple formats. Or at least tried in multiple formats. Oh, actually, yeah. They're multicolor cards. They have 3. They're one of the few colors that get 3 multicolored cards in this set. So we have Fathom Feeder. It's just, it's a little tiny blue-black 1/1 devoid Death Touch ingest. It's nothing to worry about. It's early game, just chilling. But hey, it's a rare. That's not rare material. Well, for the control player in you, this is actually a really good late game card as well. For 3 colorless blue-black, activation cost. You draw a card, and each opponent exiles the top card of his or her library. So just advantage all overall. You could say that it has ingest without attacking. That was a bad joke. That wasn't even a joke. That was just a fact. Anyways, so he's cool. He's a good early game, good late game. Also kind of has pseudo evasion with the Death Touch because, well, actually no. Your opponent's going to block it. Any decent opponent will block this card early game and have it die. So, anywho, the second card that blue-black gets, and actually I'll skip to the... So, Ulamog's Nullifier is a ridiculous card that's actually being talked about for Standard. It's a 2 colorless blue-black creature, Eldrazi Processor, 2/3. It has Devoid, like any good Eldrazi, or any Eldrazi, and it has Flash and Flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you may put 2 cards your opponent owns from exile into their owner's graveyard. If you do, counter target spell. And this is kind of like why I mentioned it being Eldrazi Exile Flying control. Some of the Eldrazi strategy decks actually don't care about the exile, and I'll get more into them in detail later on in a little bit. But blue and black really seem to care about the exile more than any of the 2 color combinations that the Eldrazi have. So that's why they end up getting the Benefic Infiltrator with Devoid Ingest unblockable to make it easier to get all those nice, sweet exiled cards. Just get all the cards exiled. And then when it comes to like removal, you have Horribly Awry, which I mentioned, that when it counters something, you exile it. There's another counter spell, Spell Shrivel. When it counters something, it's exiled. You have Complete Disregard in black. That's a removal spell that exiles the target. And also Grip of Desolation that exiles a creature and a land. Just gets rid of them. And then blue. Blue has the most processors out of all of the colored archetype. All the colors. Just all of the colors. Blue has the most processors. So it only makes sense to try to utilize as many of these processor effects as you can and try to exile as much as you can. So, and also Mist Intruder, another great evasion ingester that will be utilized in this type of strategy. So actually that's about all I can say about... Oh, well, I should mention the giant Eldrazi in multicolor. Sire of Stagnation. 4 colorless, blue, black, 5/7. It's a mythic rare. And it's got Devoid. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player exiles the top 2 cards of his or her library, and you draw 2 cards. So, if you open with this card, well, I'm not sure. I think at the moment, price-wise, it's doing pretty well. Double checking real quick. But even if it's not doing well price-wise, you're just going to pick this and use that strategy, because this is a really good card for that strategy. And yeah, it's looking at the price right now, I personally use MTG Goldfish because I like looking at averages rather than looking through lists and cards. But it's about at $13 right now, and well, of course, that's probably hype price. I don't know if it actually will be. Well, Control's gonna use it in one way, shape, or form, as either for mirrors or just as a card. So it's hyped. It's hyped enough that it has that big of a price tag. It's good enough. But we'll see. It'll probably drop down below $10, maybe even below $5 at some point. So yeah, blue-black, Eldrazi, Exile, Flying, Control, yay! Well, if you just ignore the flying part, it's Eldrazi, Exile, Control style of deck. Alright, next. And I'm going to talk about the next two in combination. And more so when I get into the 3-color deck archetypes that do exist in one way, shape, or form. But both blue-red and black-red are 100% Eldrazi themed. Well, I mean, yes, both colors do have synergies with any and all of the Eldrazi, or the Zendikar, the allies, whatever. Blue on the lesser end of the ally stem. And red actually does have a lot of Awaken cards, and I'll get into that later on. But blue-red and black-red, mainly red, actually, really care about colorless creatures. They don't even have to be Eldrazi. Well, in Limited, they'll always be Eldrazi. But they really care about colorless. And you know, you can kind of blah 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 blah. You can kind of divide this into two categories, or the colors into two separate things. The blue-red, as generally most blue-red archetypes end up being, they somewhat care about instances, well, about spells, just spells in general. I mean, the blue-red cards that they get, we have Brutal Expulsion is their rare, and it's devoid, choose one or both, return target spell or creature to its owner's hand, or deal 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If it dies, put it to exile instead. So, I mean, that's just a really good card. And it's a spell. Well, instant, I should say. But the main card that for the Herald of Kozilek is the other blue-red, and he's 1 colorless, blue and red, 2/4 Eldrazi drone with devoid, and colorless spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, which is nice. And yeah, what I would say is blue-red cares about the colorless matters as a whole, but if you go to black-red, the black-red cares about colorless creatures specifically, more specifically than blue-red. And just looking at their multicolor cards again, we have Duststalker. They also have only 2 cards for black-red Eldrazi. Or this black-red multicolor. We have Duststalker, the rare, 2 colorless black-red for a 5/3 Eldrazi. Devoid, haste, and at the beginning of each end step, if you control no other colorless creatures, return Duststalker to its owner's hand, which is really good. Like, this is being talked about as it's pseudo dash in a way, and I have to agree with that. It's quite interesting. And then Forerunner of Slaughter is the other multicolor Eldrazi for black-red, and it's got devoid. It's a black and red 3/2. And it's got Devoid, and you pay 1, target colorless creature gains haste until end of turn. So, both Deathstalker and Forerunner are really creature-centric. And I'm not just talking about, it's not just with these multicolored spell that this is apparent. Well, actually, you could say that blue also cares about the creatures as well. It does have 2 cards, Ruination Guide and Tide Drifter, that give boosts to colorless creatures. But those are the only examples in blue that really care about that. And actually, to be truthful, red is really the color that cares the most about colorless matters. And black being a sub providing aggro, blue being a sub providing spells. So, well, I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll talk more in detail when I get to 3 colors. But just, I'll keep that thought in your head for now. Blue-red, colorless matters. Black-red, colorless matters, aggro. Is more of what the thing is. Now, black-green. And for some reason, this did not become apparent to me until I looked through the list itself. But black-green really cares about Scion. Well, the Eldrazi in general care about Scion tokens, but blue-green really cares about them the most. And the reason being is for sacrificing. Yes, naturally, black generally loves sacrificing creatures, but there's so much in both. Like, there's so much Scion creation and cards that want to be sacrificing Scions or sacrificing anything in both black and green. It's actually quite brilliant. So, looking into the multicolor cards they get 2 as well. Catacomb Shifter. Oh, wait. I like going ABC order, sorry. Brood Bitcher. Bitch. Oh my god. Live recording. Huh? Brood Butcher. Oh my god, that's gonna be a quote. Brood Butcher. It's a 5-drop, 3 colorless, black, green, rare, Eldrazi drone 3/3, with, it's devoid. And it enters play, you put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature onto the battlefield. And if you didn't know already, Eldrazi Scion creatures have sacrifice, add 1 to your 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. But I'm never going to repeat that to you guys. It's pretty cool. But Brood Butcher, ignore what I said before. It's Butcher. For black and for a black and a green, you sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until a turn. And, that's essentially really, really awesome that you can do that. And then Catacomb Shifter is another Eldrazi drone, and it's colorless, black, green, 2/3, that whenever it enters play, put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token onto the battlefield. And he has, whenever another creature you control dies, scry 1. And that's the card that really tipped me off to the strategy. Because not only do you have the Brood Butcher sacrificing things, you have the Catacomb Shifter caring about you having creatures die, and then you go back up to black. And one of the highlight cards of this entire set for constructed format, this is probably the deck it fits the best in, is Smothering Abomination. It's a 4-drop, 2 colors, 2 black, for a 4/3, devoid flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature, and whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. It just fits. It's just perfect for this entire strategy. And then black in general has a bunch of sacrifice outlets. Altar's Reap, that sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Bone Splitter, Bone Splitter, sacrifice a creature, destroy target creature. Carrier Thrall, when it dies, you get a token. There's just essentially there's a lot of ways for black to sacrifice things, and green has a lot of ways to make Scion tokens for you to sacrifice. And they all care about things dying and sacrificing. There's even this interesting zombie that is really scary to look at, honestly. It's not as scary as a Macabre Waltz, but it's a Voracious Null, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colors, 1 black, for a zombie 2/2. For 1 and a black, you can sacrifice another creature, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Voracious Null, but you can only use it as sorcery speed. So, another card that really cares about the sacrificing. And actually, there's a green card that reminds me a lot of, I actually have to look it up real quick to see if it was in an original. No, it was it was an Alara block, actually, I think. I'll look it up real quick. There we go. Yeah, and this guy, it makes me... It wasn't just in this set. What are you doing? Okay, yeah, it was in Shards of Alara, is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about Algae Garel, and it was also in the recent Modern Masters 2015 format, and that's what this next card reminds me of. This card's name is Rot Shambler. It's a 2-dropped 1/1. 1 colorless, a green for a 1/1 fungus. And whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Rot Shambler. And that reminds me of Algae Garel, because Algae Garel, I remember this being talked about so much during Modern Masters 2015 draft pods. It's actually a really powerful card, because the only thing that's in its way in Modern Masters 2015 draft, the only thing that's really in the way of Algae Garel back in Shards of Alara Limited was so many Death Touch things running around. But in Modern Masters 2015, there wasn't as much Death Touch, so it wasn't that big of a worry. And actually, looking through black again, and a thought just occurred to me actually, there is not a lot of Death Touch in this format. I mean, Drana would get rid of the fungus before it got too big. Obviously, there's tons of removal. There's tons of ways to just block this guy, have it die. There is Malakir Familiar that's Death Touch, but he's the only one that, let's see, in Nirkana Assassin can have Death Touch. And okay, never mind. So it's not as good as Algae Garel in Modern Masters 2015 draft, because there are a good amount of Death Touch things that can kill it. But you let this Rot Shambler just sit on the field while you're sacrificing your Scion tokens to who knows what. This thing will get big pretty quickly. And I'm excited for the day that I will actually see that unfold. This is another strategy that I'd be very interested to play myself. And that's not all I can say about it. Just Scion tokens for sacrificing in any way, shape, or form that you wish. There's plenty of other creatures in here, in the set, that would like to die, and don't care if they die for the greater good of Eldrazi overlords. Now, let's take a break from Eldrazi and talk about one of my favorite color pairings of all time. Red-green. Now, red-green is interesting. And this is another thing that didn't come apparent to me until I started actually looking at the lists for this set, is that red-green are essentially lands matter. Lands matter all the time. And just the first 3 cards of red, all 3 of the Akoum cards, Akoum Firebird at Mythic, Akoum Hellkite at Rare, and Akoum Stonewalker at Uncommon, have landfall. Just all the lands matter. And not only that, not only do they care about landfall and, you know, ramp strategies, because that's usually red-green's basic thing, is they always have some way of ramping into their giant creatures and bombs. And in this case, they want to be ramping into elementals. There aren't a lot of elementals in this set. Not really. I mean, we have the Akum Stonewaker that makes elementals. We have, like, in these colors, we have I'm scrolling. You can see that there's not, you can tell that by me not talking about him, that there's actually not that much. There's Valakut Predator, that is a 3-drop 2/2, 2 colors in red for landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, he gets +2/+2. And he's an elemental. So, hey, there's both the landfall and the elemental cares. And then in green is where you really see some big powerhouse elementals. Actually, a couple of the cards being talked about a lot in Standard. A green Ward of Murasa is just a very good value creature that enters battlefield, get a card from your graveyard. Dies, get a card from your graveyard. But you have to exile him, which is kind of sad, but it makes sense. So that's a big value elemental that exists. Another big value elemental is Undergrowth Champion, another mythic. I'm starting to see a trend here. The good elementals are at mythic. I'm wondering if elementals were too strong in development. But Undergrowth Champion is 3-drop, 1 colorless, 2 green. If damage would be dealt to Undergrowth Champion while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter from Undergrowth Champion. Sorry, it starts as a 2/2. Forgot to say that. But it also has landfall. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. Hey, elemental and landfall. There it is again. Oh. And then there's also like the probably my favorite Converge card, and we'll get more into Converge later, but Woodland Wanderer is also an elemental. It's a 3 colors and a green for a 2/2 elemental with Vigilance and Trample. For a rare? That seems weird. But for Converge, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. So at most, for the red-green, it would probably just be a 3/3. But it can go up to 4, so it at most is a 6/6. At the very least, it's a 3/3. At the very most, it's a 6/6. That's not too bad. Could be better, but it's not too bad. So, red-green, there's another elemental in the multicolor called Grove Rumbler that cares about landfall. See where I'm going with this? Landfall elemental is really... They really are driving home that this is the strategy you want to go with if you're going red-green. But he has Trample. He's a 2 colorless red-green 3/3 Trample, landfall. Whenever a land enters play, he gets +2/+2 until end of turn, which is pretty nice. And, well, if you are so lucky enough to get a fetch land out of your pack, of the Expedition pack, it would be perfect for this. Also, why would you? But never mind. I'm raving with jealousy out of people getting Expedition lands. It hasn't even happened yet. But the mythic in question, the mythic that really ties this entire strategy together, is Omnith, Locus of Rage. He's a big guy. For 3 colorless, 2 red, and 2 green, so 6 in total. Wait, no. 7 in total. My math is no good. For 7-drop, you get a legendary elemental 5/5 with landfall. Whenever a land enters play, put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. And whenever he or another elemental you control dies, you deal 3 damage to target creature or player. So, shenanigans ensue. So, it's really an elemental matters with landfall, crazy deck strategy. Let's see. Any other cards I can mention? Any of the cards with Awaken would be great for this deck. I forgot to mention what Akum Stonewaker does, since she is a 1 colorless, 1 red human shaman, 2/1 with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 2 colorless and a red. If you do, put a 3/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste onto the battlefield, exiled at the end step. So, just, you know, that unfortunately doesn't trigger Omnant's ability, I don't think, because it's not dying, it's just exiling itself. Or would it count towards? No, I don't think it does. But it is very, very cool. And then there's a bunch of other landfall in red-green. There's a landfaller that gains first strike. There's a... Oh, I haven't even mentioned him. Dragon Master Outcast, another mythic that would be great in this deck. Why does this color combination really care about mythics? Eh. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, put a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield, which is awesome. And then this is the color pairing. Well, any Eldrazi deck will care about this as well, but this color pairing especially will care about getting lands into play faster, and there's tons of green support to be able to do that. Beastcaller Savant is a ramper. It's our new version of mana elves, just mana dorks. Mana dorks are now 2-drops, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. Doodly-doo. Another mana dork is Lifespring Druid, but it's not as dorky. It's a 3-drop 2/1. Natural Connection, Nisa's Renewal, Sylvan Scrying, all these ways of getting lands into your hand. And getting lands into play with Swell of Growth. So, there's a lot that you can do with red-green. It just really cares about lands, really cares about elementals. End of story. Now next is red-white, and this color pairing, I would say, cares most about ally aggro. Now, even just looking at the multicolor cards they get, they're another color pairing that gets 3 cards that are multicolored rather than 2. So, Angelic Captain is a 5-drop, 3 colorless red-white for a 4/3 angel ally. It has flying. And whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other attacking ally. So it really cares about going wide. Versus the battle cruiser magic that is Eldrazi. And also, ally, because it really cares about ally. And actually, come to think of it, this is one of the very few cards in this set. Because for those that are unaware, in the original Zendikar block with allies generally only cared about other allies. They didn't care about other creature types, or other creatures that weren't allies. And with this set, they changed that up so that rally would really be a thing. So that, I mean, yes, you have to care about allies and getting allies into play, but the effects would branch out to all creatures. And I think this is like the first card, or first, maybe only card, I'll have to look through the list again, that really just cares about ally. Wait, let me correct myself. March from Beyond, yes, that cares about allies, but that's just an ally-based card. Or ally spell. This is the first ally creature that just cares about allies. Which is interesting, because most of the other allies either just don't have an effect, or the rally, which affects everything. Well, it's a good card for this strategy I mentioned, and it's probably like going to be the highest drop you'll go for the deck is Angelic Captain. Yeah. Another card in here. The other rare is a legendary creature named Munda Ambush Leader. It's actually a friend of Gideon's. Oh, and we'll talk about Gideon in a moment. Don't you worry. Munda Ambush Leader is a 4-drop, 2 colorless, a red and a white for a 3/4 with haste. And he has quite a wall of text on him. Whenever he or another ally enters, well, he has Rally. Whenever he or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top 4 cards of your library. If you do, reveal any ally cards from among them. Put them on the top of your library in any order. Put the rest on the bottom of your bottom in any order. So it's just, I actually kind of find it weird that red and white would have this type of effect. Generally, it's green tends to have, oh, look at the top cards and choose things and put things on the bottom. That's generally a green or a blue thing. It's very weird to have it in, for me at least, to see it in red and white. So I'm wondering why it exists, to be truthful. I mean, it's a good card, don't get me wrong, but it's just interesting. So the last multicolor card for red and white is Resolute Blademaster. It's another 5-drop. Would be your other high curve card that you'd be happy with that high curve card. But it's a 5-drop 2/2, which is not very exciting. It's 3 colorless red and white, but it has Rally. Whenever he or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control gain double strike. And this is continuing the trend that, I mean, double strike is a very powerful ability, but it's starting to lose its mojo. Like, not a lot of people can, it's not exclusively in higher, well, I think it's in uncommon up. It's not exclusively rare and mythic anymore, or I don't think it's ever been. But it's not incredibly exciting, but it's still a very good card for the strategy as a whole. And then just getting into some of the other allies that support the ally aggro strategy. We have Chasm Guide, that is a 4-drop 3/2 Goblin Scout ally that rallies for haste. We have Fire Mantle Mage, that 3-drop 2/2 that rallies for menace. And we have a 4-drop 4/3 Minotaur Warrior ally that rallies with Trample. And those are just in red, and we have a 2-drop attack each combat if able ally unless you control another ally. But you're in red-white aggro. You're attacking every turn. It doesn't matter. We have Shatterskull Recruit. It's a 5-drop 4/4 with Menace. It's a common. Actually, that's a pretty good common. Huh. High pick common for this deck, but this deck strategy would probably be the Shatterskull Recruit. It's a 3 colorless, 2 red, 4/4 with Menace. Like, if you don't get any other bombs, if you don't get the Angelic Captain, if you don't get Munda, or Hero of Goma Fata, Shatterskull is a pretty good option for your high drop. And then the prime example of red aggro in a nutshell for allies is Zada Hedron Grinder, another legendary creature. It's a 3 colorless and a red for a 3/3 Goblin ally legendary creature. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada Hedron Grinder. So, before I continue, as an example, there's a nice card in white called Lithomancer's Focus that is for 1 white instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to that creature this turn by colorless sorcery. So let's just take that card for example. So whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that has a single target that targets Zada, you give that effect, you copy that effect for each creature you control, and each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So that means your entire team would have +2/+2 in protection from colorless. that means if you're attacking full throttle into an army of Eldrazi Scions and a few other creatures, they're probably like, oh, I'll just block with some of these big giant Eldrazi. Nope. Just prevent all that damage. And this would also work defensively as well, if you needed to work defensively. They attack with, like, Breaker of Armies, for example, is an Eldrazi that comes to mind. That normally would probably wreck ally aggro. And Breaker of Armies is an 8-drop 10/8 Eldrazi that's just colorless. All creatures able to block Breaker of Armies do so. That probably would really wreck an aggro deck. But if you combine the Lithomancer's Focus with Zada and just give your entire board protection from colorless and +2/+2, that Eldrazi is gone. It's just dead. Dead and gone. Thankfully, Lithomancer's Focus is a common, so if you end up getting Zada, I recommend getting the Lithomancer's Focus as quickly as possible. And then when it comes to, white, I think is, I don't know if this is what the term technically is for this, but I'm going to call it a catalyst color. The color that you really revolve, that as a standalone is fine, combines with any other color that cares, and it makes it even better. And for that, for allies, the catalyst color would definitely be white. White has a great amount of allies, just that do a lot of things. It has Gideon, ally of Zendikar, that just either becomes an ally or brings out allies. And just good utility ally rally creatures overall. So, ally aggro red-whites, not a bad plan. I think it'll be quite enjoyable. So, next is, well, to be truthful, the green-white deck, I don't actually 100% understand if this strategy would even work. So, alright, what is green-white trying to do? What do they have a lot of? They have a lot of allies. They have a lot of lands matter. They have some awaken going on. They have some ramp, because green will have some ramp. What do their multicolor cards look like? And to me, unfortunately, when it comes to the multicolor cards that they got, I think they got the short end of the stick. Because there's not a lot of token strategies in this set. Not a lot at all. I mean, the ally, pardon. The Eldrazi really care about their scions, yes. That's this whole token strategy. But green-white, actually, I guess it would care. Alright, so green-white would pretty much just be the token deck. The generic token deck that just exists. Veteran War Leader is the rare multicolor card that, for green-white, is one colorless, a green and a white for, sorry, for Star. For those of you that don't know what Star means, that means that its effect will dictate what its attack and defense will be. Sorry, power and toughness. Oh, my apologies. Veteran War Leader's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control, so actually that does kind of scream, I care about a lot of creatures, get a lot of creatures out, which probably means tokens. Lots and lots of tokens. Ally tokens and Scion tokens, because those are the two easiest accessible tokens. The other tokens that exist in the set really are hard to come by. Or not as, I mean, you can totally get the token cards themselves, but it's just bringing them onto the field that's a little bit more difficult. Like Omnant's landfall elemental tokens, and there's the Akum Sky. I had the strange inclination to call it Skywalker. Stonewaker, that's his name. anyways, yeah, Veteran War Leader definitely wants a lot of creatures, probably tokens, go wide, have a lot of attack and defense. And then you can tap another untapped ally you control. Veteran War Leader gains your choice of First Strike, Vigilance, or Trample, which is pretty cool. And then the other white-green, green-white multicolor card is Grove Tender Druids. That has Rally. Oh, it's a 4-drop 3/3, 2 colorless, green-white, 3/3. Elf Druid ally. Whenever it has Rally, whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, put a 1/1 plant creature token onto the battlefield. I kind of wish there was more plant creature tokens, to be honest. I think this is the only card that cares about that. And then more kind of token producer shenanigans. We have all of the Scion tokens that you can deal with. Blister Pod being a little 1-drop 1/1 that brings out a token. Brood Monitor, 6-drop 3/3 that brings out a token. Call of the Scions is a sorcery that puts out 2 1/1 Scion tokens. And this, can all lead up to ramping into bigger creatures, which is pretty nice. But I think that's all I can really talk about it. I mean, it does have a decent amount of allies. I mean, all of the white allies I've already talked about. Gideon would work really well in this deck. Some of the green allies that are pretty good. I mean, the Beastcaller Savant being a mana ramp and also an ally is pretty nice. And actually, green doesn't have a lot of allies. It has a few. It just doesn't have a lot. So, yeah, that's about it, actually. Just tokens. All the tokens. And have fun with it. And then lastly for just the 2-color strategies, it's actually kind of the most confusing for me. Because I'm not sure if it's even gonna be that good. Well, first off, the Scion tokens. I mentioned this before. Blue and green both produce the most amount of Scion tokens, so that's probably what you want to go for. This, out of all of the deck combinations, is probably, well, you can make an argument for blue, black as well, but green and blue, to me, for the Eldrazi side of things, seem to be the ones in the best shape to mana ramp into their giant Eldrazi, because they have so many token producers, so many ways to just gain advantage with processors, and yeah, just overall, it's a great color combination for this strategy. But the other side of things, it actually has the most converge. And let me just scroll on down here and talk about some of these multicolor cards. Let's first talk about the big Planeswalker in the color combo. It's Kiora, Master of the Depths, looking really cool on her tentacle with the Biden. She's Planeswalker, 2 colorless, green and blue, starts at 4 loyalty. She got +1, untap up to 1 target creature and up to 1 target land. Yeah, pretty good, just good effect. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a creature card or a land card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. And it's pretty good. There's no real graveyard carrying strategy in this set, so I mean this is more for standard. This card in general is more for standard than anything else. But -8, you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature, then put 3 8/8 octopuses. Octopeople. Creature tokens onto the battlefield. So, Kiora, out of all 3 of the Planeswalkers, is probably... It's still a good card. don't get me wrong. If you get this in draft, pick it up, play it, just do it. Just do it. But out of the 3 planeswalkers, it's probably the least synergistic with any of the strategies. I mean, Gideon has ally synergy. Nixilis, at the very least, is a great control tech card overall and directly supports the white-black drain and gain if you get his emblem out. Kiora really, it supports ramping. It supports giant creatures. So anything that has those types of strategies, it fits in. But it probably will do a lot better in Standard than it will Limited, to be honest. Or Constructed, rather than Limited, to be honest. So we'll talk more about her tomorrow. But the next... green-blue is at the final color that gets access to... gets access to 3 cards rather than 2. The next card, it's a little bit of a confusing card. It's another card that I don't think it's viable in Limited. And in general, I just don't think Converge is viable in Limited. Break to Light, it's a 5-drop, 3 colorless, green-blue, sorcery. It's Converge. Is this the first time I've talked about Converge? No, it's not. Converge, search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast Bring to Light. See? Or exile that card, then shuffle your library, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. See? I guess in regards to this card, I'm not sure, like, with the strategy I just mentioned that green-blue is probably the best at, is producing Scion tokens and ramping into your giant Eldrazi. Bring to Light doesn't directly support that. I mean, technically, there's a bunch of Eldrazi Scion token makers that are in those converted mana costs that would be great to just bring onto the battlefield for free. But I mean, if you're searching for things, wouldn't you rather be searching for... Actually, in Green's case, I think you'd rather have the From Beyond enchantment rather than any instant or sorcery you could pick up. And when it comes to creatures, you'd rather be trying to get your big creatures... at 5 mana cost, you'd rather be trying to get your big creatures into your hand. Because that's the stage of the game you should be at 5 mana. Is that you're already set up to try to get your giant Eldrazi out. And the fact that this can only go up to, if you're running a 5-color deck, which is possible. It's very possible to do a 5-color deck in Limited. I'm not sure how successful it will be. But having to use 5 colors of mana to just get a 5-cost card, I do not know how viable that is. I don't think it's actually that viable at all. So I think I went a bit ranty on that one. But the final card, the final multicolor card, and the final green-blue card, it's a Sky Rider Elf. It's an Elf Warrior ally that costs X, green-blue, and 0/0. And this is the one that Converge actually works, and I enjoy it. So flying, Skyrider Elf enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. So, at the most, it can be a 5-drop 5/5. Well, I like this the most out of, no, the Woodland Wanderer is probably my favorite Converge card, but this is a close second. So, taking my math into consideration, at the least, it can be a 3-drop 2/2 flyer, which isn't terrible. But at the most, it can be a 3-drop 5/5, which is pretty good. But that also, again, you have to rely on doing a 5-color strategy. Of course, I'd rather be playing this at 5 than the Bring to Light at 5, to be honest, for limited. And then let's get into some of the other cards in the strategy. When it comes to Scion tokens, the biggest producers in blue, Drowner of Hope gets you 2 of them, Eldrazi Sky Spawner gets you 1 of them, and On a Flying Body. Incubator Drone gets you 1. Just overall, the tokens are not the issue here. I'm just gonna ignore Converge, actually. I mean, let's just go through some Converge cards real quick. Brilliant Spectrum, at max 4 colors, in a 4-color deck or a 5-color deck, you draw 4 cards and then discard 2 cards. That's fine. And then Exert Influence, max 5, if you have a 5-color deck. You can gain control of target creature if its power is less than or equal to the number of colors of mana costs to cast Exert Influence, which is fine. Honestly, the Take Control cards, cheaper versions probably were used a good bit in Limited, but I'm not sure. I guess I'll have to wait and see it until someone breaks a 5-color deck and proves me wrong, but I just can't see the viability in Converge being its own actual deck type. So, yeah, Scion tokens. Yeah, the enchantment I mentioned earlier that would be great for this deck, that's probably the best for this deck, is From Beyond. It's a 4-drop, 3 colorless, 1 green enchantment. It's got Devoid. Beginning your upkeep, put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token onto the battlefield. Free token every turn. Sign me up. And then for a colorless and a green, you can sacrifice this, search your library for an Eldrazi, reveal it, put it into your hand. So that's the perfect card for this strategy, is From Beyond. You're producing tokens every turn, so long as they don't destroy it. And there are ways to destroy enchantments and get rid of enchantments in this format. And then, when you got enough tokens, when you think you got enough, you can sacrifice From Beyond, get a giant Eldrazi into your hand, get Ulamog if you happen to get Ulamog, and just slam Ulamog onto the field, and your opponent will cry infinitely. Although there are quite a few ways to get rid of Ulamog in this format, with all the exiling. It's a great balance, in my opinion. So, that's it with the 2-color. That's generally what I think. Out of the 2 colors, I think I'm most excited about the white-black Pain and Gain, for sure. I think that's going to be interesting. I'm quite excited for the red-green Landfall Elemental Ram, the red-white Ally Aggro. Actually, just everything. I'm excited about everything overall. Now, I'm just going to talk briefly about the 3-color strategies, because I think I'm... oh, yeah, hour 25 minutes. Jeez. Yeah, let me just briefly talk about the 3 colors, combos, and what I kind of think of them. Let me start out by saying I have no idea what Bant wants to do. Well, actually, Bant probably cares the most about lands. Lands in general. Just awaken the lands, landfall the lands, shenanigan the lands. Or Awaken in general. Awaken is their calling card. And actually, Kiora probably fits into this deck pretty well. Esper, I mentioned it earlier. Like, white and blue, out of the 2-color combinations, probably has the strongest support for flyers. So does blue and black. So all 3 together, you have really interesting flyers control deck, because you got all of the best removal in white, blue, and black, just in general. Grixis, I mentioned this before, and Colorless Matters Eldrazi. This is like the strongest strategy for this, and there's a card I didn't even mention before for the more aggressive side of things, called Swarm Surge. It's a 3-drop, 2 colorless, and black sorcery with Devoid. Creatures you control get +2/+0, and colorless creatures you control also gain First Strike. which is ridiculous. Just a ridiculous card in limit. It actually would be a pretty good finisher now that I think about it. So Grixis is a really cool colorless matters, and that leads me into Jund, which at first I was actually kind of confused on what Jund wanted to do, but then I realized it has the sacrifice element. It has the sacrifice element not only with the black-green, but Barrage Tyrant that is both sacrificing and colorless matters. So it's really like a sacrifice colorless type strategy. Naya would be definitely be a Naya aggro, or Naya ally aggro deck. That just slams in the face every turn. Just go for face all the time with that deck. Naya, I think it would be interesting. Abzan, token sack, just 100% token sack. You got the tokens producing from the scions in green, and you got core tokens in white, and ally tokens in white and green, and you just got tokens all over the place, and you need somewhere for those tokens to go, so why not sacrifice them? That's what Abzan apparently looks like it wants to do. Alright, this is actually a re-recording for Jeskai because I made a major error in that I didn't read entirety of, well, I over-assumed that red had a lot of Awaken in it when it clearly does not. It only has one Awaken card. But, so, this is a re-recording of my thoughts on Jeskai, just for a brief moment, and although my initial reaction doesn't really change. Red has a lot of landfall, so lands matter, and white and blue have a lot of Awaken, and that still matters. So essentially, Jeskai still is an instant sorcery, land-themed archetype. And it will use things like flying as well. Depend on landfall. We have Converge is in there a couple times in red as well. And we have Stone Fury, which is a instant that cares about how many lands you have in play. It deals damage equal to the number of lands you control. So, yeah, lands are a pretty big deal for red. So, and with the addition of white and blue giving it Awaken, Jeskai definitely would be still similar to Bant, that they care about Awaken, but Jeskai cares more about landfall Awaken rather than just pure Awaken. Sultai, actually probably my favorite 3-color combination out of everything. It's just Scion token shenanigans is what I call it. You have the token producers of green and blue, and you have the sacrificing caring of creatures with green and black, and then we got really good quality creatures for Eldrazi in blue and black. It's just insane. Out of the 3-color combinations, I think this is the one that I personally am gonna try to see if it works, but I think it's gonna be good. It's gonna work. It's gonna be fine. But then Mardu, I call it Ally March. It's just another ally deck. It's combining. You don't have to go into the pain and gain and drain of life that the white-black side of things does, but the red-black is essentially, it's always aggro, and the red-white is aggro, so it's it's great. It's another ally aggro deck. So Mardu and Naya both care about allies and tend to go on the aggressive. And then for Temur, this is a tough one actually. But thinking about it a little more, I don't know why I wrote down Converge in my notes, but it does care about landfall, it does care about lands, it does care about Awaken, but it also cares about colorless, it also cares about Scion tokens, and it also cares about exiling things. And ramp. All the ramp. So, I actually can't pin down a name for it, but Timur has a lot of things going on that it wants to do, and it's fine. It's interesting. It's nice. And I think out of any color combination that exists, Timur will be the ones to use the converge effect to its best ability. Alright, so that has been my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this type of content, if you want to see more of me just talking about sets of Magic, sets of any card game actually, I enjoy talking about all the card games. Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Pez the card game. I'll try to look it up. Look it up, it exists. But yeah, hit the subscribe button if you can't wait to see another video and you want to be notified as soon as it comes out. Like this video if you like this video, and if you have any, comment below what your favorite archetype of limited format is, and I'll be sure to read it. I'll be sure to reply. I would love to hear everyone's opinions about what you think about the limited format for Battle for Zendikar. Alright, well, thank you for watching, and have a awesome day, everyone. Peace.